The 10 phases of service. The key to understanding the details of exceptional service in the dining room starts with understanding the dining experience as a whole. In this lesson, we'll give you an overview of the flow of service, from setting up to closing up. Throughout the course, we will be referring to these different stages of service to help you understand where everything fits in. These 10 stages are preparation, including meetings, preparing your equipment, and setting up the dining room. Greeting the guests. Welcome the guest and escort them to their table. Seating the guest. Seat the guest and present the menu and wine list. Drink service, including water, aperitifs, and wine orders. Bread service. Deliver bread to the table. Taking orders. Recommend dishes and take orders. Serving the meal. Tea, coffee, and digestive service. Guest departure. This includes bringing the bill, bidding the guests farewell, and escorting them to the car. And lastly, after service. This is the post-service meeting and clearing. So let's take a look at these in more detail by starting with preparation. One of the golden rules in service is the 5 Ps. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. If everything is ready and in place before service starts, things will run much more smoothly once the guest arrives. Think of baking a cake. You don't just start mixing sugar and butter. First, you get all the ingredients ready. This way, you are sure that you have all the correct ingredients. If not, you might realize too late that you don't have eggs, and your cake will be ruined. The same is true of service. Your table should be set with beautifully prepared tableware, and every member of the team should know their duties and the roles that they play. By preparing everything you will need first, you ensure that there is no unnecessary stress once the guest arrives, providing the guest with an excellent dining experience. Now let's look at greeting the guest. Once everything is set up, we're ready to receive the guest. This means that we have the guest information prepared and we greet the guest with a warm smile. Once we have taken the guest's coats, they are then escorted to the table. Now comes seating the guest. This stage includes giving the guest an orientation of your establishment if necessary, seating the guest, and delivering menus and the wine list. Next is drink service. Here, we provide the guests with drink service. This includes water service and recommending an aperitif, a pre-meal drink, to stimulate the appetite, such as champagne. Guests may also order wine. Now we have bread service. Here, we provide the guest with fresh bread and bread accompaniments to tie them over until they are ready to order. Bread service can also be delivered after the guest has placed their order. Followed by this, we have taking orders. Now that the guest is comfortable, has something to drink and a bite of bread to eat, they are ready to receive your recommendations. After giving them time to decide, you can take their orders. Now we have serving the meal. At this stage, you ensure that everything is ready at the table and then present the dishes to your guests. When all the guests at the table have finished their meal, you can clear the plates. Depending on the guest and your establishment, there may be multiple courses, and you will do the same for each course. Now comes coffee, tea, and digestive service. After the final course, many guests may enjoy a hot beverage, such as tea or coffee, and a digestive, an after-meal drink to help digestion and round off the meal. Examples of digestives include whiskey and cognac. Now comes the guest departure. You must always host the guests until the very end. At the end of service, when the guest has requested the bill, you will present it to the host. Once the bill is settled and the guest is ready to leave, you will greet them sincerely and escort them out of the dining area. Lastly, after service. Remember that service doesn't end when the guest leaves. The team still needs to get together to discuss the highs and the lows of that service. You also need to ensure that the dining area and staff areas are cleared and cleaned up and ready for the next service. Can you remember all 10 phases? Let's recap quickly. First comes preparation. In this lesson, we'll take a look at some different styles of service found in the restaurant world. We'll start by looking at service traditions. We'll be looking at 4 service traditions. They've been named after countries, but nowadays simply refer to how food is presented to the guest. Let's start with English or silver service. English, or silver service as it's also called, refers to a style where a server goes around to each guest and plates food from a serving dish. This is done using either a pair of tongs or a spoon and fork in one hand. Next is French service. French service originates in the royal courts of France, when all the courses were brought out at once and guests could help themselves to the feast. This provides a grand display of food, but is impractical because it is impossible for all the food to be enjoyed warm and at its peak. Next is Russian service. Russian service is similar to French service in that the dishes are placed on the table for guests to help themselves. It is different, however, in that the courses are brought out one after the other, not all at once. Finally, there is American or plated service. This is a style of service where the food is artfully set out on individual plates by the chef and then served to seated guests. As you might have guessed, this is the most common form of waiter service. Next, we'll be looking at different types of menus. Firstly, the à la carte menu. If the service style is à la carte, the individual dishes are listed on the menu along with their price, and the guest simply chooses which dishes they would like. After this comes table d'hôte, or the fixed price menu. Table d'hôte means host's table, and is a menu consisting of a limited number of dishes offered under each course. The meal is then charged for at a fixed price and as a whole, not according to dishes. Now let's look at the styles of service. Let's start with buffet service. Your establishment may also have buffet service, where all the dishes are displayed in a dedicated area away from the table for guests to help themselves. This is a great way for guests to see what is on display and dish up exactly what and how much they want. Next is banquet service. Banquet service is often delivered at functions where the establishment is receiving many guests. The menu is generally limited to a few options per course and delivered plated to the guest. Now let's look at bistro service. Bistro-style establishments often have a simpler, more casual style of service, without too much fuss, and serve hearty, honest dishes in a smaller setting. Now let's look at counter service. Restaurants with counter service often have an open kitchen surrounded by a counter where the guests are seated. This provides a lovely interactive style of service where guests can see the preparation process. Finally, we have fine dining. Fine dining restaurants, as the name implies, are usually more upscale establishments, offering an elegant atmosphere and attentive service. The food is expected to be superb, combined with an excellent wine offering. The different service traditions, menu styles, and styles of service are combined in different ways. So to recap, can you remember the different service traditions? Grab your pen and write them down. Here's a clue though. They are named after countries. The service traditions that we looked at are silver or English service, French service, Russian service, and American service. And what about the two menu types we looked at? They were à la carte and table d'hôte. And finally, can you remember the service styles we looked at? They are buffet service, banquet service, bistro service, counter service, and fine dining. Now that we've gone through an overview and flow of service, let's take a look at all the different people who make it happen. We're going to look at quite a large structure, but at your establishment, some of these positions may be combined, or your structure might be different. The main things to understand is where you fit in and the role you play in making service great. The positions we'll be looking at are the trainee commis, the commis de rang or runner, the station waiter, the station head waiter, the sommelier, the maître d'hôtel, the reception head waiter, and the restaurant manager. By the end of this lesson, you should have a better understanding of these positions. Let's take a closer look at the roles of each of these. Firstly, the trainee commis. The trainee commis is an apprentice who has just started in the food industry and still has everything to learn. They will usually help out with preparation and be active back of house. That is, the non-guest areas, such as the kitchen, offices, and storing and receiving areas. In these areas, the trainee commis will, for example, fetch service equipment and help with cleaning, and will have very little, if any, interaction with guests. Next we have the commis de rang, or runner. The runner is also in a supportive role and receives instruction from the station head waiter. They will be more active front of house than a trainee commis, fetching and clearing plates, as well as helping with setup and preparation before service. Now we look at the station waiter. One group of tables on the floor is called a section, and each section will have a number of station waiters. The station waiter will support the station head waiter in carrying out most of the food service at the table, and so both must have a good knowledge of the menu and food, as well as wine and other beverages. The station waiter may also be responsible for making recommendations and taking the guests' orders. Now let's look at the station head waiter. The station head waiter and the station waiter form a team. The station head waiter might make menu and wine recommendations and take orders, and usually has more experience than a station waiter. Next, let's look at the wine steward or sommelier. The wine steward or sommelier is responsible for the alcoholic drinks served at the restaurant. They should have a great knowledge of all the drinks served, including all wines on the wine list. The sommelier also makes wine pairings with dishes on the menu. That is when a specific wine is chosen to be served with a specific meal, because their flavors go well together. Now let's look at the maître d'hôtel, or head waiter. The maître d'hôtel, or simply maître d', has a supervisory role and ensures that everyone carries out their responsibilities in preparing for service. The maître d' may also take orders when the station waiters are busy and relieves the restaurant manager at times too. Now let's talk about the reception head waiter. The reception head waiter, often also called a hostess or host, will accept bookings, reserve tables, and allocate reservations to particular sections. They also greet guests as they arrive at the restaurant. Lastly, we have the restaurant manager. The restaurant manager is in charge of organization and administration and ensures that the restaurant runs smoothly. So, now we've had a quick look at one possible way a team can be structured. Does your team look similar? Where do you fit in? In the kitchen, we'll be looking at the executive chef, the head chef, the sous chef, the chef du partie, the commis, and the pastry chef. Let's start with the executive chef. The executive chef is in charge of a group of restaurants. So, in the case of a hotel group's restaurants or chain of restaurants, the executive chef will make decisions affecting the group, such as budgets and menus. Now let's look at the head chef or chef de cuisine. The head chef, also called the chef de cuisine, is the person in charge of the kitchen. They oversee the kitchen staff and ensure that operations run smoothly. Now let's talk about the sous chef de cuisine and junior sous chef de cuisine. The senior sous chef is next in command after the head chef. Both sous chefs support the head chef and are more active in actually preparing the dishes. Sous chefs may also be in charge of a specific department, such as banqueting, pastry, or butchery. Now let's look at the senior chef du partie and junior chef de partie. Chefs de partie, also known as line cooks or station chefs, are in charge of specific sections in the kitchen, such as the fish station, the vegetable station, or meat station, and in this way support the running of the kitchen. Next is the commis. The commis is a chef in training and plays a supportive role, learning from the chef du partie. Lastly, we have the pastry chef. The pastry chef is in charge of the pastry kitchen and may have a similar structure of chefs working below them as the head chef. In this lesson, we looked at the executive chef, the head chef or chef de cuisine, the sous chef de cuisine, the senior chef de partie, the commis, and the pastry chef. Throughout the course, we'll be looking at details, how to beautifully polish cutlery, the importance of clean, crisp linen, a professional uniform, and an impeccable dining environment. But why do you think it's important to get this done at all? Why not just give the guest the dull cutlery and creased linen and wear an untidy uniform? We take care in these details because when guests visit our establishment, they want to have their senses enticed. Guests will delight in the sparkle of a crystal glass and feel welcomed by the warmth of a crackling fire. They will return again and again for dishes layered with flavor and texture and the complex aromas of exceptional wine. The opposite is also true. Guests are sure to feel unwelcome by an untidy uniform, no matter how big the smile. They will be disappointed instantly by a dirty window, no matter how beautiful the view. A dish might be unparalleled in flavor, but a guest won't touch it with a dirty fork. The best servers are those who understand this and who can put themselves in the guest's position. One way to do this is to think in terms of the guest's senses. So in this lesson, we'll be looking at the guest's 5 senses, what each is, and why they're important. Sight, smell, hearing, touch, and taste. Let's begin with sight. Possibly the first impression the guest will form of your establishment is through sight, what they see. From the moment they arrive, the guest's sense of sight should be engaged through an overall impression of the beautiful environment. And once the guest is seated, they will start to notice the details. It is your responsibility to ensure that both their overall surroundings and the finer details are perfect and a delight to view. Think about a beautiful painting. When you stand a step away from it, the picture itself looks beautiful and you can see the whole thing. However, when you move very close and look at the detail, you see even more beauty in every single stroke of the brush. This is what you want your establishment to be like. Beautiful from overall and close up. For example, stand back to look at the overall dining area. Is the lighting adequate? Are the walls clean and undamaged? Does the floor shine? Then also zoom in on the smaller details. Check that there are no lipstick smudges or fingerprints on glass surfaces. No small spots or stains on fabric. Check that the paintings are not skew. After all, it's these details that make up the whole. Now we move on to smell. Smell is a delicate and subtle sense, and consequently one that is often overlooked. However, it is incredibly important that you put yourself in the guest's position and imagine all the smells they will be experiencing. As you know, there will be the aromas of the dishes and beverages that you present to the guest. But there will also be other pleasant smells. The sweet scent of the flowers on the table, the waxy whiff of burning candles, and the subtle smell of a room that's been beautifully cleaned. On the other hand, there is nothing more unappetizing than an unpleasant smell when eating. While these could be seriously offensive smells, such as animal droppings or paint fumes, they are more often smells that are harder to detect initially, such as a napkin that doesn't smell fresh. Imagine taking a napkin to your mouth only to be met by a foul odor. Other bad smells could be your own body odor or breath. For this reason, ensure that your hygiene is impeccable and check with a colleague if you're unsure of your own freshness. Check for bad smells well before guests are due to arrive. This way, if you do note any unpleasant smells, you have time to locate and fix the problem. Now let's talk about hearing. Sounds may not be something that guests pick up on immediately, but as the meal progresses, noise can become very annoying and disruptive, ruining the whole dining experience. Think of the clattering of cutlery or the clashing of plates. But noises won't necessarily be loud and obvious. It might be a squeaky fan, or interactions in the kitchen. It could be waiters walking over wooden floors, or talking with a raised voice. Every effort should be made throughout service to ensure that unnecessary noise is eliminated. Can you please turn that down? This also includes the volume of your voice when speaking to guests and colleagues, and how you move through the dining area. But then, there are also soothing sounds. Music playing gently in the background, the crackling of a fire in winter, or distinctive bird calls when surrounded by nature. These are the types of sounds that guests will enjoy and make them feel welcome. As with the other senses, preparation is key. Before service, put yourself in the guest's shoes and imagine all the things they might be hearing. If you notice something that could bother them, do something about it in advance. Similarly, during service, always use your ears to listen out for things which may be annoying or disturbing your guests. Now comes touch. Touch relates to everything we feel. We feel surfaces with our hands, but remember that we also feel with our whole body. This means that in service, touch also includes the guest's environment or sense of space, such as the temperature of the room and whether the dining area is spacious or cozy. The guest will be touching a number of things at your establishment. Imagine the guest's route through the dining area and imagine the surfaces they will be touching. There are a few that are plain to see. The doorknob must be shining. Napkins must be clean. The tablecloths crisp. Glassware clean and sparkling. But then there are also other surfaces they will be touching. The sides of their chair as they stand up, or the bathroom door handle as they enter. No surface should be sticky, damaged, or dirty. Then there is touch in the broader meaning, how the guest will feel in the space and environment around them. Is the dining area set at a comfortable temperature? Does the guest have enough space? Have the tables and chairs been arranged in such a way that guests and waiters can flow comfortably through the dining area? These are the types of questions you should ask yourself when investigating how the guest will experience touch. Lastly, we have taste. The sense of taste is one of the main reasons why guests visit your establishment, to eat flavorful food paired with beautiful beverages. The kitchen and bar are primarily responsible for ensuring that the dishes and drinks are exceptional, and you are the link between the guest and the kitchen, and so you have a key role to play. One way in which you add to the guest's taste experience is through introducing them to the dishes. Your menu recommendations. How does this sound to you? Miss Park, may I recommend the slow-cooked beef tongue with celeriac puree and whole grain mustard. The tongue is cooked for 14 hours, making it soft and tender. The crunch of the mustard contrasts beautifully with the creamy puree. Don't you already have an idea of how the dish will taste? Another key role you play in taste is ensuring that you deliver the guests' dishes promptly and as the chef intended. It is your responsibility to check on guests after you have served them their meal, so that if the dish doesn't taste the way the guest expected or would like, you can fix the problem as soon as possible. As you can see, appealing to the guest's 5 senses includes a number of different elements of service, from personal hygiene to setting a table, to menu presentations and temperature control. And this also illustrates the approach you should take in serving your guests. It's not just about the job at hand, but also about the bigger picture. To recap, write down the 5 guest senses that you should bear in mind. You should have sight, smell, hearing, touch, and taste.